Hey guys, tonight we are going to take a gentle, meandering stroll through the less than glamorous alleyways of the past. Imagine the flickering light of a single tallow candle, the kind that sputters and smells vaguely of roasted meat. You're wrapped up, comfortable, but just outside your window, the world is dark and strange. We're headed somewhere specific on this journey, a place often romanticized or sensationalized, but rarely understood. We're going to a medieval brothel. The air around you grows thick, heavy with the scent of damp wool, wood smoke, and something acridly sweet you can't quite place. The floorboards beneath you aren't smooth and polished. They are rough, uneven planks, and through them, you feel a faint, persistent vibration of coarse laughter and clanking tankards from a room nearby. Forget any polished, Hollywood version of this experience. You probably wouldn't last the night. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And for a bit of fun, post your city and the time of night in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is listening from, all of us gathered in this quiet, digital space from different corners of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first challenge isn't the destination, but simply arriving there. You find yourself standing at the edge of a medieval city, just as dusk begins to bleed purple and gray into the sky. The first thing that hits you isn't a sight, but a smell. It's a physical presence, an atmospheric wall so complex and overpowering it makes your eyes water. It's the collective exhale of 1,000 unwashed bodies, the sharp tang of animal dung from the countless horses, pigs, and chickens that wander the streets as casually as pedestrians. Underpinning it all is the deep, pervasive funk of human waste. You see, the concept of a municipal sanitation department is centuries away. The utopian dream nobody has even bothered to dream yet. The gutters, shallow trenches carved into the center of the street, are sluggishly flowing rivers of filth, a murky cocktail of everything the city's inhabitants wish to discard. You take a hesitant step forward, off the slightly more stable ground of the main road and onto the city's cobbled streets. Or what's left of them. The stones are slick with a viscous layer of mud and something else. You try not to think about it too much. You have to lift your feet high with each step, a strange, exaggerated march to keep the hem of your tunic from dragging through the muck. It's a sound you'll come to know well, the wet, sticky slurp of your boots pulling free from the mire. You can see now why people of means would ride horses or be carried in litters. Walking is a full-body workout, an exercise in balance and olfactory endurance. High above, the timber-framed houses lean in towards each other, their upper stories almost kissing, creating a permanent twilight in the alleyways below. From windows, residents unceremoniously empty their chamber pots with a shouted warning of gardes low. If you're lucky, a rather literal form of trickle-down economics, I suppose. Your destination has a few names, none of them particularly inviting. The stews, the bankside, the pike gardens. In many European cities, these districts of vice were not just tolerated, they were officially sanctioned, regulated, and taxed. This brings us to a rather mainstream historical fact. Many civic authorities realized it was far more profitable and controllable to legalize and contain the world's oldest profession than to try and stamp it out. The brothels, often called stew houses, were confined to a specific area, usually the most undesirable real estate in the city. They were often located just outside the main city walls, or in a grimy suburb pushed up against a riverbank, far from the respectable guilds and the grand church square. And that is where you are headed now. You ask for directions to the stews, and the guard at the gate gives you a knowing, slightly contemptuous smirk before pointing you down a lane that seems even darker and narrower than the others. The further you walk, the more the character of the city changes. The air, if possible, grows thicker. You pass a tannery, the chemical stench of curing leather and ammonia, so potent it feels like a physical blow. You pass a butcher's shop, its doorway slick with blood and offal tossed into the street for the dogs and pigs to fight over. This is the city's underbelly, its forgotten corner where all the unpleasant but necessary functions are tucked away. and among them the stew houses. The name itself is a quirky little tidbit of history. In London, the most infamous district was in Southwark, on the south bank of the Thames. This land was owned by none other than the Bishop of Winchester, who licensed the brothels and collected the rents. The area was also known for its fish ponds, where fish were kept in stews to be fattened for the market. Whether the brothels were named for the fish ponds or for the hot, steamy bathhouses often associated with them is one of those little details lost to time. You finally arrive. You know you're in the right place because the atmosphere shifts from general squalor to organized disrepute. There are more men now, clustered in small groups, their laughter louder and harsher. Some are soldiers, their armor dull in the torchlight. Others are merchants' apprentices, flushed with cheap ale and youthful bravado. And here and there, you see the women, their faces painted with crude cosmetics, ceruse, a toxic white lead paint, to achieve that fashionably pale look, with cheeks rouged with cochineal. They are not draped in silks and velvets. They wear practical, hard-wearing wool, perhaps a single ribbon in their hair, or a slightly more daring neckline to advertise their trade. And then you see the building itself. Your destination. There's no glowing red lamp, no neon sign. In some towns, regulations required the houses to be marked, perhaps with a painted red lattice on the door or a symbolic evergreen bush hung over the entrance. A practice that gave us the proverb, "A good wine needs no bush." But this one is marked only by the steady stream of men entering and exiting, and the low, rumbling din that spills out whenever the heavy wooden door swings open. It looks less like a den of sin, and more like a struggling tavern on its last legs. The thatched roof is patched and sags in the middle, a testament to many seasons of rain. The wattle and daub walls are stained with soot and grime, and the small, shuttered windows promise little light within. It doesn't look alluring. It doesn't look seductive. It looks grim, foreboding even. You stand there for a moment, the stench of the lane in your nostrils, the cold, damp air seeping into your bones. Historians still argue whether the municipal regulations, rules about who could work, when they could work, and what they could charge, were a genuine attempt at social order or merely a veneer of legitimacy designed to make taxing the industry easier. Looking at this derelict building, it's hard to imagine anyone inside being particularly concerned with bureaucratic red tape. You take a breath, which you immediately regret, and push the heavy oak door open. The night is just beginning. The door groans shut behind you, cutting off the dubious freshness of the street air and plunging you into a new world of sensory assault. The atmosphere inside is thick enough to chew. A wave of oppressive heat, steam, and smoke washes over you, carrying on it the commingled scents of spilled ale, unwashed wool, sweat, and something vaguely medicinal like boiled herbs. It takes a moment for your eyes to adjust to the gloom, which is punctuated by the hazy, dancing light of animal fat candles and a large, crackling fire in a hearth at the far end of the room. The noise is a dull, constant roar, a foundation of rumbling conversations, punctuated by sharp bursts of laughter, the rhythmic clatter of dice on a wooden table, and the occasional splintering crash of a dropped tankard. This is not the hushed, velvet-draped parlor you might have imagined. This is a public house in its most literal and chaotic form. You're standing in what appears to be a large, open hall, the heart of the establishment. To your left, a makeshift bar is besieged by patrons, all shoving their wooden or pewter mugs forward, clamoring for a refill from the sweating barrels. To your right, men huddle around a rickety table, completely absorbed in a game of chance, their faces intense in the flickering light. They are betting with small, tarnished coins, the stakes likely more than they can afford. It feels less like a prelude to romance, and more like a rowdy medieval community center where the primary activities are drinking, gambling, and shouting. As you begin to pick out details, you notice that this establishment is truly a multi-purpose venue. It serves as a tavern, a bathhouse, and a brothel, with the lines between those functions being hopelessly, and perhaps intentionally, blurred. And through an archway at the back of the room, you see the source of the steam and much of the heat, the bath itself. It's not a series of private, elegant tubs. It's one enormous, round, wooden vat, perhaps 12 feet across, filled with steaming, cloudy water. And it's occupied. You can see half a dozen figures, both men and women, soaking together in the communal tub. Some are wearing thin linen shifts that cling to them like a second skin, while others seem to have dispensed with such modesty altogether. A long plank has been laid across the top of the tub, and on it are cups of wine and plates of food. People are eating and drinking in the bath, their conversations a bit more subdued, softened by the steam and the warm water. This is the stew that gave the place its name, and it perfectly illustrates a mainstream historical fact about the era. For much of the Middle Ages, bathing was a very social, public affair. Before they gained their seedy reputation and were shut down in many places, public bathhouses were common gathering spots where people of all classes could come to get clean, conduct business, and socialize. The hygiene of it all, however, seems questionable to your modern sensibilities. The water is a murky gray, and you can only guess how many bodies have steeped in it before you arrived. Any notion of therapeutic cleanliness evaporates as you watch someone casually toss a gnawed chicken bone over their shoulder and into the water. This wasn't so much about getting clean as it was about getting warm, drunk, and sociable in a very damp environment. Your silent, stunned observation of this aquatic party is interrupted by a new presence. A woman has detached herself from the chaos and is now standing before you, her arms crossed, her expression a perfect mixture of appraisal and impatience. She is not young, nor is she one of the working women. She's perhaps in her late 40s, her face a roadmap of hard-won experience. Her dress is dark wool, practical and sturdy, and her hair is completely covered by a sensible coif. This is the owner, the manager, the bod. She is the formidable hub around which this entire chaotic will turns. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, flick over you, assessing your clothes, your posture, and most importantly, the weight of the coin purse you don't have. "In or out?" she says, her voice low and raspy, accustomed to being heard over the din. You're letting the cold in. State your purpose or your thirst. Here in her presence, you feel the crushing weight of the house rules, both written and unwritten. The operation of these houses was, in theory, tightly controlled by civic ordinances. This brings us to a wonderfully quirky bit of history. These regulations could be incredibly specific. In some English towns, a bawd was forbidden from seizing a man's cloak as payment if he couldn't settle his bill in cash. In others, there were rules against dragging men in off the street, or even limits on how many women could be housed under one roof. Of course, the enforcement of these rules was often lax. The bawd points to a simple wooden board with prices chalked on it. A cup of ale, a loaf of bread, a bath. There are no other services explicitly listed. That is all handled through quiet, coded negotiation. She watches you, waiting, and it brings to mind a question that historians still debate. Were these bawds powerful, independent female entrepreneurs who carved out a living in a male-dominated world? Or were they merely another kind of prisoner in the system, just one rung higher on the ladder of exploitation than the women they managed? Looking at her hard-set jaw and the clear authority she commands in this room, it's hard to see her as a victim. But looking at the weariness in her eyes, it's also hard to see her as entirely free. She runs this small, grimy empire, but she is also bound to it, a warden who can never leave her own prison. "Ale," you manage to say, gesturing towards the bar. You need a moment, a prop to hold while you process the scene. She gives a curt nod, takes a small coin from you, the price seeming rather inflated for the quality you're likely to receive, and barks an order to one of the younger women, who scurries off to fetch your drink. You find a relatively quiet spot against a wall, trying to make yourself as small as possible. The tankard arrives, filled with a cloudy, sour-smelling brew that you hold but don't drink. From this vantage point, you observe the complex social machine in action. The women here are not merely waiting for customers. They are waitresses, entertainers, and conversationalists. One is laughing at a soldier's boorish joke, while another expertly deflects the clumsy advances of a drunken apprentice. It all has the feel of a performance, a carefully choreographed dance of commerce and desire where every smile is calculated and every touch has a price. You came here expecting sordid simplicity, but instead, you found a bustling, complicated social ecosystem, thriving in the filth and desperation. And as the night wears on, you begin to understand that the lack of privacy and the dubious hygiene are the very least of the dangers lurking in the steam and shadows. You stand there, a silent spectator in your little pocket of the room, clutching your untouched ale like a shield. The initial shock of the scene, the heat, the steam, the noise, is beginning to wear off, replaced by a kind of numb acceptance. You've adjusted to the dim, smoky light, and you start to see things with a clearer, more troubling focus. You start to notice the people not just as a crowd, but as individuals. And it's then that you begin to understand the deeper, unseen dangers that permeate the air just as surely as the smell of stale wine. Your eyes drift from the rowdy gamblers to a man sitting alone by the fire. He's better dressed than most, in a dark wool doublet that might once have been fine, but it's the man himself that draws your gaze. His face is unnaturally pale in the firelight, but across his forehead and down the bridge of his nose, there are angry, purplish lesions. His nose itself seems wrong. It's sunken, flattened in the middle, a condition known as saddle nose. He coughs, a deep, rattling sound, and when he raises a handkerchief to his lips, he moves slowly, stiffly, as if every joint is a source of pain. You look around, and you begin to notice others. A woman in the bathhouse, her laughter a little too shrill, has sores around her mouth that her thick paint cannot completely hide. Another man has a strange, shuffling walk, his mind seemingly clouded and distant. You are watching the slow, inexorable progress of the great pox. Syphilis, a disease that had been crawling its way through the underbelly of Europe for a few decades now, found a perfect incubator in places like this. This is a devastating mainstream historical fact of the era. There was no cure. Its transmission through sexual contact was quickly and widely understood, yet in a place where bodies were currency, that knowledge offered little protection. Patrons and workers alike were caught in its grasp. To enter a place like this was to knowingly walk into a contagion. Remember that murky shared bathwater? It suddenly looks less like a quirky social hub and more like a simmering cauldron of disease. That medicinal smell you noticed earlier might well be from guaiacum wood, an expensive and useless wonder drug imported from the New World, or worse, from mercury, a brutal treatment that often poisoned the patient faster than the disease could. As this chilling realization settles in, your attention is drawn to another, more immediate threat. Your hand tightens instinctively around your coin purse. It's not a large amount of money, just enough for a traveler to get by, but in here, it might as well be a royal treasure. You notice the bot again. She misses nothing. Her eyes track every transaction, every coin that passes from one hand to another, with a predator's focus. She is not merely the keeper of the house, she is the master of its grim economy. You watch a merchant, his cheeks flushed with drink, fumble with his purse to pay for another round for the companions he has chosen. As his fingers struggle with the drawstrings, you see one of the serving girls lean in close, ostensibly to hear him better. Her hand hovers, just for a second, perilously close to the open pouch. The merchant pulls his money free, oblivious, and the moment passes. But you saw it. It's time for a quirky and slightly terrifying historical tidbit. The skilled thieves of the age were called cut purses for a reason. Purses weren't kept in pockets, which were often just slits in a tunic, but hung from a belt or girdle by leather cords. A nimble-fingered thief, armed with a very sharp little knife, could sever those cords in a crowd and be gone before the victim even felt the slight loss of weight at their hip. A place this loud, this crowded, this distracting is a cut-purse paradise. Suddenly, every jostle, every accidental bump from a passerby feels like a potential threat. You notice that the men who look the most comfortable, the seasoned regulars, all seem to keep one hand firmly on their belt, a casual posture that is anything but. Even your fellow drinkers are potential threats. That sad-looking man next to you could just be drowning his sorrows, or he could be sizing up the worn quality of your boots. Desperation is a powerful motivator, and this room is thick with it. One light joke might be that the most intimate relationship many people had in here was with their own wallet. The general roar of the room has been a constant background noise, but suddenly the quality of that noise changes. It happens at the gambling table. You don't hear the initial argument over the clangor, but you see the shift in body language. A tense moment of stillness. The camaraderie of the game vanishes, replaced by accusation. One man, a large, bearded fellow who looks like a dock worker, slams his fist on the table, sending dice skittering across the floor. He bellows something about cheating, pointing a thick, grime-encrusted finger at a wiry, younger man opposite him. The young man shoots to his feet, his chair scraping loudly on the rough floorboards. His face is pale with a mixture of fear and insulted pride. "You lie," he spits back, his voice cracking. And just like that, the fragile peace of the establishment is shattered. Before anyone can intervene, the big man lunges across the table, grabbing a handful of the younger man's tunic. The sound is a wet, ugly thud as his other fist connects with the young man's jaw. The room doesn't fall silent. Instead, it erupts in a chorus of shouts, some goading, some protesting. Another terrible joke is that a medieval bar fight doesn't wait for someone to slide a tankard down the bar. It usually just starts with the tankard being broken over someone's head. The fight is not a graceful, choreographed movie brawl. It's a clumsy, brutal scramble. The two men tumble sideways, taking the table with them in a crash of splintering wood and clattering pewter. Then, something glints in the firelight. The young man, now on the floor, has pulled a knife. It's a small, practical blade, the kind a man might use to cut his bread or mend his tools, but its purpose now is deadly serious. The crowd that was pressing in a moment ago now surges backward, creating a sudden, panicked circle around the two combatants. The bod screams a furious, unintelligible command. It is here that you understand the raw, immediate nature of justice in a place like this. Historians still debate the efficacy of city guards and the so-called peace guilds in preventing this kind of casual violence. How effective could a night watchman be against a room full of armed, drunk, and angry men? The answer, you suspect, is not very. Here, on the stained floor of a back-alley stew house, disputes are settled quickly and personally. Just as you think you are about to witness a killing, two hulking men, who you now realize are the house's enforcers, plow through the crowd. They ignore the knife, grabbing the larger man by the arms and hauling him, kicking and cursing toward the door. The door is flung open, there's a brief view of the dark, filthy lane, and the man is unceremoniously thrown out into it. He lands with a splash. The door slams shut. The younger man is still on the floor, breathing heavily, the knife held loosely in his hand. The brawl is over. The entire incident lasted less than a minute, but the room is transformed. The raucous energy is gone, replaced by a sullen, watchful quiet. The man on the floor eventually picks himself up, puts away his knife, and limps toward the bar, but nobody meets his eye. You feel your heart hammering against your ribs. The hypothetical dangers of sickness and theft have just been eclipsed by the bloody, undeniable reality of violence. And you still have the entire night ahead of you. The aftermath of the fight settles over the room like a layer of dust. The air, scrubbed clean of its brief, violent energy, is now thick with a sullen tension. The enforcers have melted back into the shadows, as if they were never there. The bod moves through the room with a renewed, grim purpose, her presence alone a stern reminder of order. The younger man with the knife is gone now, perhaps having slunk out the back, his small victory leaving no trace. The chaotic energy has been replaced by something heavier, more introspective. You feel your own heartbeat finally slow to a normal rhythm, the adrenaline ebbing away to leave a cold, weary residue. With the immediate threat of violence gone, you begin to see the other cages, the invisible ones that hold the people in this room, just as surely as iron bars. Your gaze shifts from the male patrons, lost in their own worlds of drink or dice, to the women. The performance has stopped. The professional laughter and flirtatious glances have faded, replaced by a quiet, shared exhaustion. They move about their tasks, refilling a cup, adding a log to the fire, with an economy of movement that speaks not of efficiency but of weariness. They're conserving a finite resource. And as you watch, you witness a small, mundane transaction that reveals the fundamental truth of this place. A merchant, pleased with his companion for the evening, approaches the bod. He speaks to her, gesturing towards the woman who stands a few feet away, her eyes fixed on the floor. He counts out a series of coins into the bod's waiting palm. She recounts them, her lips moving silently, then gives a satisfied nod. The merchant gives the woman a final pat on the arm and turns to leave. The woman, whose time and company were just purchased, receives nothing. The money vanishes into a pouch at the baud's belt. She turns to the woman and says something sharp and low. The woman simply nods and walks back towards the steaming bath, her face a blank mask. You are witnessing the grim, exploitative heart of the craft. This is a mainstream historical fact that strips away any romantic notion of the trade. The women themselves saw almost none of the money. They were, in essence, employees in a highly unregulated and predatory system. The baud, or the male stewholder, would take the earnings directly from the client. From that amount, she would then deduct a dizzying array of expenses. There was a fee for bed, a fee for board, the food likely being the dregs of what the patrons didn't eat. There was a fee for washing the linens. There was even a charge for the candles used for light. Anything and everything was monetized. A cynical joke might be that the only employee retirement plan offered by the house was an unmarked grave in the churchyard. As the night deepens, you find yourself near two of the younger women who are huddled in a corner, momentarily forgotten by the patrons. They are mending a torn sleeve on a dress under the poor light, their heads bent close together, their conversation a soft murmur. You don't mean to eavesdrop, but their voices carry in the relative quiet. You catch snippets, fragments of a heartbreaking story that is likely the story of every woman here. Broke a cup, one whispers, her needle pausing. She took a whole day's wage for it. The other one sighs, a sound that seems too old for her young face. My blue dress has a wine stain. She says I'll have to pay for a new one if I want to work the merchant's fair. This gives you a glimpse into the insidious cycle of debt and coercion. This is the quirky, almost diabolically clever mechanism of their prison, clothing. To attract the higher-paying clientele, the men with actual silver in their purses, a woman needed to look desirable. This meant wearing fine clothes, or at least finer than a standard servant's woolens. The baud would happily provide these clothes, a dress of dyed fabric, perhaps some ribbons or even a cheap piece of lace, all on credit. But the price she charged for them was astronomical, far beyond what the garment was worth. With each new dress, each small repair, the woman's debt grew, chaining her more tightly to the house. Leaving wasn't an option, as they owed the baud a sum they could never hope to repay. Any attempt to flee would be met with swift and brutal consequences, either from the house's enforcers or the city guard, who were often in the baud's pocket. Reading the fine print was never an option. It's the medieval equivalent of agreeing to an app's terms and conditions without ever scrolling down. It's a perfect, inescapable trap. They work to pay a debt that their very work increases. The meager share of earnings they might receive after all the deductions would never be enough to break free. They were trapped by poverty, by social stigma, and by a carefully constructed economic prison from which there was no parole. You look from the young women whispering in the corner to the hardened face of the baud, who is now counting her earnings at a small table. And the historian's question returns. Is she a ruthless predator or just another prisoner, perpetuating the system that once trapped her? The truth, you suspect, is somewhere in the miserable space between. Just as the bleakness of the situation threatens to overwhelm you, you see it. A small, almost imperceptible act of defiance. One of the women, returning from the main hall, passes by the two who are mending the dress. Without breaking her stride, and without a word, she places a small piece of bread, likely pilfered from a patron's plate, into the hand of the one who had worried about her wage. It's gone in a flash, tucked away into a fold of the girl's sleeve. A shared glance is the only acknowledgement. A little later, you see an older woman, her face etched with a permanent weariness, put a comforting hand on the shoulder of a much younger girl who looks close to tears after a coarse encounter with a drunken soldier. No words are exchanged, but the gesture is one of profound, silent empathy. These are the faint glimmers of humanity and resistance. They cannot fight the system with knives or angry words, as that would only lead to ruin. Their rebellion is quieter. It is in the sharing of stolen food, the whisper of comfort, the shared glance of solidarity that says, "I see you." You are not just a body for hire. You are a person. It is in these tiny moments that they reclaim a fraction of their stolen humanity from a world determined to strip it from them. Historians still argue about the true nature of the social bonds within a brothel. Were the women fierce rivals, competing for the wealthiest clients in a desperate game of survival? Or did they form surrogate families, tight-knit communities of support against the abuse of the patrons and the exploitation of the keeper? The answer is probably both, a complex and ever-shifting tapestry of rivalry and alliance. But here, in this dim and smoky room, you see definitive proof of the latter. This quiet kindness is perhaps the only commodity in the entire building that isn't being taxed by the baud. It is a small, flickering candle of shared humanity, held against an overpowering darkness. And it makes the entire scene infinitely, heartbreakingly sadder. The hours have ground on, each one longer and heavier than the last. The fire in the great hearth has collapsed into a sullen, glowing pile of embers, providing more mood than light. The boisterous energy of the evening has long since bled away, leaving behind a stale and silent exhaustion. Most of the patrons are gone, having stumbled out into the night or paid for a louse-ridden bed in the warren of rooms upstairs. A few remain, passed out at their tables, their heads resting in puddles of spilled ale, their snores adding a soft, gurgling rhythm to the near silence. The women who are not attending a client are huddled together on a bench near the dying fire, their faces pale and drawn in the gloom. They aren't speaking. There is nothing left to say. The performance is over, the masks are off, and what remains is a crushing communal weariness. The bawd sits alone at her table, a solitary dragon guarding a pitiful horde, her eyes finally closed. The entire building seems to hold its breath, steeped in the dregs of the night's despair. Then you see it. Through a grime-caked crack in one of the window shutters, a single, impossibly thin line of light appears. It is not the warm gold of a beautiful sunrise, but a weak, watery gray. It is the color of dirty dishwater, the color of ashes. But it is morning. It is permission to leave. You rise slowly, your limbs stiff from sitting on a hard stool for hours. Every muscle protests. You move with a thief's caution, careful not to scrape your stool or tread on a loose floorboard that might groan in protest. You do not look at the women on the bench, nor at the sleeping figures. You feel like a ghost departing a field after a battle, unseen and irrelevant. You ease the heavy door open, its familiar groan sounding deafeningly loud in the stillness, and slip out. The air hits you like a physical shock. It's cold, damp, and piercing, but after the suffocating, recycled air of the stew house, it feels outrageously clean. It is, of course, nothing of the sort. The same thick, signature stench of the medieval city hangs in the air. The mud, the waste, the animals, but it's diluted by the morning mist, and for a glorious moment, it smells like freedom. You take a deep, greedy breath. A fine piece of sarcasm would be to call the air refreshing. In reality, it's just a different vintage of foul. The lane is empty, and the rising light casts long, distorted shadows, making the familiar filth of the street look alien and new. As you begin to walk away from the stew house, you hear a distant, rumbling cart and the low voices of men at work. This is a wonderfully pungent historical tidbit. You may be witnessing the morning rounds of the gong farmers, the brave, or perhaps desperate, souls tasked with collecting the city's human waste under the cover of darkness. Your ordeal of the night was their regular 9 to 5, or rather 9 to dawn. As you trudge back toward the main thoroughfare, your boots making that same slurping sound in the mud, you become aware of something else. The experience of the night hasn't stayed behind that closed door. It has come with you. It's a sensory stain that you can't wipe away. You can feel the grime of the place on your skin, a phantom stickiness. You lift the collar of your tunic to your nose, and you can smell it. The faint, unmistakable odor of stale smoke, spilled drink, and old sweat woven into the fabric. The experience is quite literally clinging to you. The sounds echo in your head, the sudden shout of the fight, the clatter of dice, the forced laughter of the women, the quiet, heartbreaking whispers of their conversation. It's a cacophony of memory that no amount of clean morning air can silence. The only effective cleaning method, you joke to yourself grimly, would be to burn the clothes and perhaps the top layer of your skin. And deeper than that is the moral stain. You passed the night, but something was lost in the process, any lingering, romantic illusion about the past. You didn't find rollicking adventure or clandestine romance. You found a deeply sad, grinding machine fueled by desperation and alcohol. You remember the faces, the chilling, dead-eyed stare of the man with the pox, the fierce vigilance of the bawd, the flash of kindness as one woman shared a piece of bread with another. These images are now seared into your mind more vividly than any tapestry or coat of arms. Just then, a church bell begins to ring, slow and steady. This is a common sound, the morning bell that calls monks to prayer and tells the city a new day has officially begun. It also signals that the stew houses, by law, should be shuttered, a mainstream fact of municipal control. It rings in the day for the baker and the blacksmith, but for the women you just left behind, it only rings in another cycle of debt and endurance. You have survived. You didn't get robbed, you weren't stabbed, and you've hopefully avoided contracting a disease that would make your nose fall off. But you understand now that the real reason you wouldn't have lasted is not a single dramatic danger. It's the crushing, cumulative weight of it all. It's the inescapable filth, the constant threat of sickness and violence, and above all, the profound, soul-crushing misery of the people trapped within the system. To endure that, night after night, would require a part of your humanity to be chiseled away. Historians continue to discuss whether these legalized districts acted as a genuine social safety valve, preventing wider chaos, or if they simply institutionalized and amplified the worst forms of human exploitation. After your night in the stew, you find it very hard to argue for the former. You finally reach the city gate as the sun clears the horizon, a weak, white wafer in the sky. You step out onto the open road, leaving the city's stench and sorrow behind you, but knowing you will carry the memory of it for a long, long time. The journey is over. You survived the night, but you leave your illusions behind, buried somewhere in the mud and misery of that back alley brothel. The secretive life of a Cold War, numbers station broadcaster. The world comes into focus slowly, softly, the way it always does. First, the vague shape of the window, its frame a slightly darker rectangle against the gray dawn. Then, the familiar scent of last night's rain on the clipped lawn outside and the faint, persistent ticking of the bedside clock, a sound so constant you only notice it in these first few moments of waking. You lie still for a minute, maybe two, letting the quiet of the house settle over you. This is your ritual, a brief, silent negotiation with the day before it truly begins. You swing your legs out from under the heavy bedspread, the cool floorboards a gentle shock to your system. The worn terry cloth of your robe envelopes you in a familiar, slightly threadbare embrace as you make your way to the kitchen. Everything is in its place. The porcelain cat, a gift from your aunt, sits unblinking on the windowsill, its painted smile a little too cheerful for this hour. The copper-toned canisters for flour, sugar, and coffee stand in a neat, unassuming line on the countertop. You spoon the dark, fragrant grounds into the percolator, a small, satisfyingly metallic scrape that echoes in the stillness. It's a simple, domestic sound, a world away from the other sounds, the other life. As the coffee begins its gurgling, rhythmic dance, you unfold the morning paper left on your doorstep. The headlines speak of tensions, always tensions. A new wall, a new satellite, a new round of pointed diplomatic statements that mean everything and nothing. You scan the words, your mind absorbing the information with a practiced detachment. The article on the front page discusses the ongoing construction of the Berlin Wall, a stark physical manifestation of the invisible line that divides your world. The photograph shows grim-faced men laying cinder blocks, watched by others from a distance. To most people reading this, it's a problem for diplomats and soldiers, a far-off piece of political theater. To you, it is the context for everything. It's the why behind the ticking clock and the silent telephone. Your eyes drift to a smaller item on page 3, an advertisement for a new kind of fallout shelter. This one promises easy, shovel-free installation and a patented air filtration system, as if surviving the unthinkable were as simple as buying a new lawnmower. You allow yourself a small, humorless smile. People will buy it, of course, just like they bought those government pamphlets last year, the ones with the friendly cartoon turtle advising you to duck and cover. You've seen the internal reports. You know what those bombs can do. The turtle, bless his little heart, doesn't stand a chance. You pour the coffee, black and potent, into a heavy ceramic mug. The warmth seeps into your hands as you stand at the kitchen window, looking out over the manicured gardens and identical rooftops of your suburban cul-de-sac. It's a portrait of tranquility. Mr. Henderson across the street is already out, meticulously watering his prize-winning roses. A dog barks in the distance. A bicycle with colorful streamers on the handlebars lies abandoned on a perfect green lawn. It's a world built on the assumption of continuity, the belief that tomorrow will be much like today. It's a beautiful, fragile lie. Historians still argue whether the quiet, relentless suburban sprawl of this era was a genuine expression of optimism or a desperate attempt to build a psychological fortress against the ever-present threat of nuclear annihilation. Looking at the perfectly aligned houses, you feel it's probably a bit of both. The telephone rings. It isn't a cheerful, insistent ring like a friend calling for a chat. It is a single, sharp, professional brawling that cuts through the domestic hum and then stops, followed by an unnerving silence. It's not meant to be answered. It's an alert. You don't rush. You take one last, slow sip of your coffee, placing the mug carefully in the sink. You run your hand over the smooth, cool laminate of the countertop. You are methodically detaching, pressing pause on this version of you, the you who worries about crabgrass and remembers to put the milk away. The one who exchanges pleasantries with Mr. Henderson about the weather. That person is now going on a short, unscheduled vacation. You walk to the telephone, a heavy, cream-colored rotary model that sits on a small table in the hallway. It's clean, almost sterile, its silence more commanding than any sound it could make. After waiting a full 60 seconds, just as you were trained, you lift the receiver. You don't speak. The line is open, filled with a faint, empty hiss, the sound of distance. You wait. A voice, utterly devoid of inflection or emotion. A voice that sounds less human and more like a machine that has learned to approximate speech, utters a single word. Valise. Then a click. The line is dead. Valise. A suitcase. An old-fashioned word, deliberately chosen for its lack of common, modern usage. It isn't a code you need to look up in a book. The codes are inside you, filed away in a part of your mind that remains dormant during your quiet suburban life. The word is the key that turns the lock. It means now. It means no delays. It means a car will be waiting in 2 hours at the prearranged spot, 2 towns over. It means the story you've prepared for your neighbors about a sudden trip to care for a sick relative is now active. You move to your bedroom, your steps measured, your breathing even. There is no panic, no adrenaline rush. That would be a waste of energy, a dangerous indulgence. Panic is for the people in the newspaper photographs, for the ones who believe in the cartoon turtle. Your job is to be the calm at the center of the storm, even if the storm is silent and invisible. In your closet, behind the sensible woolen coats and summer jackets, is a simple, sturdy suitcase. A valise. It's not leather, but a drab, gray canvas that attracts no attention. Inside is not the clothing of your everyday life. There are no floral print dresses or comfortable cardigans. There is only a collection of personality-free garments. 2 gray blouses, 2 black skirts, sensible, noiseless shoes. Underwear of the plainest possible design. A toothbrush, a bar of unscented soap. Nothing that could identify you. No labels, no monograms, no stray receipts tucked into a pocket. This is your uniform for a job that has no name, for a department that doesn't exist. As you pack, your mind idly recalls a peculiar footnote from your training materials. You learned that ancient Egyptian laborers used a sunscreen made of rice bran, jasmine, and crocodile dung. The instructor had presented this as an example of how humanity has always found strange, occasionally disgusting ways to protect itself from a hostile environment. It was meant to be a lesson in resourcefulness. But now, as you place the anonymous clothing into the gray suitcase, you think the real lesson was about acclimatizing to the absurd, getting used to the idea that something bizarre, even repulsive, can become a normal part of your routine, like living a double life in a quiet suburb, or listening for a single nonsensical word that can turn your world inside out, or, for that matter, preparing to speak in numbers to listeners you will never know, in places you can only imagine, for reasons you can only guess at. The job is absurd, your life is absurd, but you do it. Just as the Egyptian worker once reached for the crocodile dung without a second thought, you now reach for the gray suitcase. It's just what the day requires. The house is now a stage set. Before you leave, you perform a final, quiet inspection. In the kitchen, your coffee mug sits clean and dry in the dish rack, a silent testament to a morning that proceeded just as it should. You place a small, handwritten note on the hall table, weighted down by the porcelain cat. Called away to Aunt Carol's. It reads in your neatest cursive. Her hip is acting up again. Not sure when I'll be back. Will call when I can. The note is a masterpiece of plausible banality. Aunt Carol and her fickle hip are a long-running, entirely fictional drama you've cultivated for years, a shield of domestic white lies to deploy at a moment's notice. Everyone on the lane knows about poor Aunt Carol. They'll nod sympathetically and maybe even offer to collect your post. It's a joke you share with yourself, that the most effective cover story isn't a thrilling tale of corporate espionage, but the soul-crushing boredom of familial obligation. You lock the front door behind you, the click of the tumbler sounding unusually final. The street is still quiet. A thin morning mist clings to the neatly trimmed hedges. You don't walk towards the local bus stop. That would create a clear, traceable line. Instead, you walk in the opposite direction, towards the small patch of woods that borders the newer end of the development. There's a footpath there, a muddy track used mostly by teenagers and dog walkers. It will take you to the next town's high street, where you will become just another face in the crowd, valise in hand, seemingly on your way to visit a relative. Your real journey has begun not with the roar of an engine, but with the squelch of your sensible shoes in the mud. The train station is a place of transit, of deliberate anonymity. You purchase a one-way ticket to a town 30 miles down the line, a place with no significance to you whatsoever. You pay with cash, neatly folded bills from an envelope you keep for just this purpose. You stand on the platform, your gaze unfocused, your posture relaxed. You are a gray woman with a gray suitcase, utterly forgettable. This, is your greatest skill. Not the fluency in numeric code or the steady hand on the transmission dial, but this, the ability to melt into the background, to become human wallpaper. The train arrives with a hiss of air brakes and a shudder that you feel in the soles of your feet. You find a seat in a carriage that is neither too full nor too empty. You sit facing backwards, watching the world slide away. Houses, fields, factories, all blurring into a watercolor smear. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the rails is a familiar, hypnotic sound, the heartbeat of the nation's arteries. Since the war, the government has been pouring money into connecting the country, rebuilding what was broken. The newly nationalized railways are hailed as a symbol of unity and progress. For you, they are a tool of convenience, an intricate web of comings and goings that allows a person to disappear with ease. You watch the other passengers from beneath lowered eyelids. A young soldier, his uniform still stiff, nervously reading a letter. A woman with two fractious children, trying to contain their chaotic energy with a bag of boiled sweets. An older gentleman in a tweed jacket, his face buried in a book. Psychologists and historians debate whether operatives in such isolated roles were more susceptible to paranoia or a unique form of meditative calm. You feel neither. You feel a profound sense of distance, as if you're watching these people through a thick pane of glass. Their lives so full of small, immediate concerns, a missed connection, a crying child, the turning of a page, seem impossibly intricate and very far away. At your destination, a drab mid-sized town you've never seen before, you step off the train and walk directly to the station's small newsstand. You ask the vendor for a copy of the Daily Telegraph and a packet of mints. He passes them to you, his eyes never quite meeting yours. This is the first check. He doesn't need to know who you are or why you are here. His only job is to note your arrival and, if anyone should come asking after a woman with a gray suitcase, to give a vague, unhelpful description of someone who bought the Guardian and a bar of chocolate half an hour ago. It's a simple human firewall. You don't leave the station. You sit on a cold, hard bench in the waiting room and you wait. The clock on the wall ticks loudly, each second dropping into the pool of silence. Half an hour passes. A new train is announced, this one a slow local line, a stopper, that will pause at every forgotten village and hamlet for the next 50 miles. This is your train. As you board the nearly empty carriage, you idly remember a tidbit from a briefing document on failed intelligence programs. Apparently, during one particularly inventive phase of the Cold War, a Western agency spent millions trying to surgically wire cats with listening devices, with the aim of having them wander into sensitive enemy meetings. The project, codenamed Acoustic Kitty, was an expensive and spectacular failure, primarily because they discovered what every cat owner already knows. You can't actually tell a cat where to go. You find this more reassuring than you probably should. The world of espionage isn't all sleek gadgets and unflappable heroes. Sometimes, it's just a bunch of very serious men being outsmarted by a cat's fundamental desire to take a nap in a sunbeam. This second journey is different. The landscape outside the window slowly loses its domesticated feel. The neat patchwork of fields gives way to rougher pasture, then to moorland thick with gorse and heather. The sky seems to grow larger, the clouds more dramatic. You get off at a station that is less a station and more a suggestion of one. There is a single platform, a small, rain-streaked shelter, and a faded sign giving the name of a village that appears to be nowhere in sight. The train pulls away, its rumbling fading until the only sounds are the wind and the lonely cry of a curlew. You are now officially in the middle of nowhere, a place that exists between the lines of a map. You stand and wait, your gray valise on the weathered platform beside you. 5 minutes later, a car appears. It is as anonymous as your suitcase, a dark, unremarkable sedan, a model popular enough to be everywhere and therefore nowhere. It is clean, but not suspiciously so. The driver gets out, a man with a plain, forgettable face. He does not greet you or even look at you. He simply takes your valise, places it in the boot, and opens the rear passenger door for you. He is a function, not a person. The car's interior smells faintly of vinyl and stale air. You don't speak. He doesn't speak. You don't ask where you are going. He would not answer. He drives with an unnerving smoothness, taking the winding, narrow lanes with a practiced ease. The civilization you left behind this morning is gone. There are no other cars, no houses, no road signs. Only a vast, empty expanse of land under a low gray sky. You pass through a dense forestry plantation, the tall, straight pines swallowing the light and deadening all sound. It's better than any barbed wire. Who would come looking for anything out here? This is the final layer of security, boredom and desolation. If you told someone to drive to the most boring place they could possibly imagine, they might end up here by accident. The perfect hiding spot. After another 20 minutes, a building resolves out of the gloom. It is low, windowless, and made of gray concrete, looking like a forgotten piece of agricultural or military infrastructure. A pumping station, maybe. A meteorological outpost. It is a building designed to be ignored. The car pulls up to a single, featureless metal door. The journey is over. You have arrived at nowhere. The heavy metal door closes behind you with a solid, echoing thud. The sound is absolute, a full stop on the sentence of your journey. All the noises of the outside world, the whisper of the wind through the pines, the distant cry of the bird, are instantly extinguished. They have been replaced by a new soundscape, the low, omnipresent hum of electricity. It seems to come from the walls, from the floor, from the very air you breathe. It's the sound of a place that is always on, forever vigilant. The driver, the man with the forgettable face, is gone. You didn't see him leave, nor do you see a door through which he could have exited. He simply melted back into the machinery of this place, his task complete. You stand in a small, square room, the walls made of the same featureless gray concrete as the exterior. There are no pictures, no signs, not even a scuff mark to suggest that other people passed through here. The air is cool and dry, tasting sterile, recycled. It has never known a season. In the center of the opposite wall is a small, stainless steel hatch, like something from a bank vault or a submarine. There is no handle. You wait. A moment later, a faint click is heard and the hatch slides open, revealing a dark cavity. This is for the valise. You lift the gray suitcase, the last object connecting you to the life you left this morning, and place it inside. You don't hesitate. To hesitate would be to admit attachment, and attachment is a contaminant here. The hatch slides shut as silently as it opened. Your worldly possessions, the anonymous skirts and blouses, the unscented soap, are now gone, whisked away to be sterilized, checked, and stored until your return journey. Now a narrow doorway to your left illuminates. A soft, green light glows above it, the only spot of color in the monochrome room. It is a summons without words. You pass through into a longer corridor, your soft-soled shoes making no sound on the polished linoleum floor. The institutional gray is overwhelming, a very specific, government-issue shade that seems engineered to absorb all light and joy. You suspect there's a committee somewhere whose sole job is to choose these colors, probably after lengthy debate and a series of joyless focus groups. That's a real Cold War weapon right there, boredom as a form of camouflage. Halfway down the corridor is another door, this one marked with a simple, black silhouette of a female figure. Inside is a changing room, a space of profound and deliberate neutrality. It contains a single locker, a wooden bench, and a small shower cubicle. The locker is open. Inside, a single garment hangs from a hook, a loose-fitting, long-sleeved tunic made of a stiff, off-white cotton. Below it sits a pair of simple, slip-on canvas shoes. There are no pockets in the tunic. There is no brand. There is no size tag. This is your final uniform. The skin you wear inside the skin. You undress, folding the clothes you traveled in, themselves chosen for their anonymity, and placing them in the locker. The protocol is to strip everything away. You are shedding the person who walked through the woods, who sat on the train, who rode in the silent car. You shower, not for cleanliness, but as a ritual of purification. The water is precisely body temperature, neither a shock nor a comfort. The soap provided is a small, pale block that smells of nothing at all. As you stand under the perfectly regulated spray, your mind drifts, as it sometimes does during these rote procedures, to the more peculiar aspects of your profession. You recall reading a captured memo that described a fantastical new intelligence-gathering device, a miniature reconnaissance drone disguised as a dragonfly. The Insectothopter, they called it. You imagine a team of engineers, brilliant men in horn-rimmed glasses, huddled in a lab somewhere, painstakingly trying to build a spy out of balsa wood and insect wings. The project was naturally a complete disaster, defeated by the simple physics of wind. You find comfort in that failure. It's a reminder that beneath the grim, gray concrete and the faceless protocols, this whole secret world is still run by humans, capable of spectacular, almost childlike flights of fancy. Dressed in the sterile white tunic, you feel the final layers of your outside self fall away. The transformation is nearly complete. Historians will one day debate the psychological cost of this kind of deep, repeated compartmentalization. They'll ask whether operatives like you developed separate, distinct personalities, or if the constant peeling back of layers left nothing but a hollow core. From where you stand, on the cold floor of this anonymous changing room, you feel the answer is simpler. You are not two people. You are a single person who simply has two modes, on and off. You are currently switching to on. Leaving the changing room, you follow the corridor to its end, which opens into a small, clinical-looking office. There's a Formica-topped desk, an uncomfortable-looking chair, and another person. Well, a partial person. All you can see is a torso and a pair of hands through a thick, bulletproof glass window, not unlike the kind you see at a bank teller's cage, if the bank were preparing for an imminent armed assault. The face is deliberately obscured by a carefully angled privacy screen. You do not speak. You place your hand, palm down, onto a designated square on the countertop. A small, almost invisible pinprick tests your fingertip. A single drop of blood for the records, to confirm your identity beyond any doubt. Then you sit in the chair. The disembodied hands slide a clipboard through a slot. It holds a standard form, but the questions are not about your health or your next of kin. They are a series of nonsensical control questions. Is the sky made of cheese? Do you sleep in a tree? Have you ever been to Jupiter? You answer truthfully, ticking the no box for each. Below this you sign, not with a name, but with the simple geometric symbol assigned to you, a small triangle inside a circle. It's a signature that means nothing to anyone outside these walls. The hands retreat and slide a more complex piece of equipment through the slot, a set of electrodes and a blood pressure cuff. This is the part of the protocol you dislike the most, the machine that pretends it can see your thoughts. The polygraph test. It was developed in the 1920s, a so-called lie detector that measures physiological stress. By now, its use is widespread in both law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Everyone knows it's a deeply flawed, easily manipulated technology. A good operative can control their breathing, regulate their heart rate, and sail through it without a flutter. The test isn't really to catch you in a lie. It's a psychological tool, a ritual of submission. It's designed to remind you that the organization doesn't just demand your obedience, but claims ownership of your very nervous system. Remember that friendly duck and cover turtle? This is his less friendly cousin, the one that asks you invasive questions while keeping a steady, unnerving watch on your pulse. The hands operate the machine. A series of routine questions are posed by a tinny, distorted voice from a small speaker. Are you who you say you are? Have you had any unauthorized contact since your last activation? Are you operating under duress? No. 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 The needles on the machine barely twitch. You feel a strange sense of victory in your own placidity. The hands retract the machine. A moment passes. Then, another green light flashes on a small panel on the desk. You are cleared. The process of erasure is complete. You are no longer the person who woke up in a suburban house this morning. You are not even the anonymous traveler from the train. You are now merely a component, a voice, a function. You stand up, turn, and face the final door. This one is thicker, heavier, with a small, circular window of soundproofed glass. Beyond it lies the heart of this nowhere place. Beyond it is the studio. You push the heavy door, and it swings inward with a satisfying, weightless glide, cushioned by a hydraulic arm. You step through, and the door sighs close behind you, the latch engaging with a soft, decisive click that feels different from all the other sounds of this place. This sound isn't about security, it's about acoustics. You are now inside the broadcast booth, the sanctum sanctorum of this silent, concrete church. The hum of electricity is gone. So is the faint echo of your own movement. The silence in here is a physical presence. It presses in on you from all sides, a thick, velvet blanket of absolute quiet. The walls are not flat and gray but covered in dark, geometric wedges of acoustic foam, a jagged, alien landscape designed to trap and kill every stray sound wave. There is no echo, no reverberation. When you swallow, the sound is unnervingly loud, an internal event with no external audience. This is an anechoic chamber, a room designed to be acoustically dead. The space is Spartan, functional to the point of monasticism. In the center sits a simple, sturdy metal desk, its surface bolted directly to the floor. Attached to it is an equally immovable chair. Everything is designed to prevent an accidental bump or scrape from going out over the air. On the desk, the equipment is integrated into the console itself, its faceplates flush with the surface. There's a large, round VU meter with a gracefully arcing needle, a bank of heavy Bakelite switches, and a series of large, satisfyingly chunky dials for tuning the transmitter's frequency. And in the very center, positioned on a heavy, shock-absorbing arm, is the microphone. It's a classic, broadcast-quality dynamic microphone, large and vaguely imposing, its fine wire mesh grill pointed directly at the empty chair. Your first action is to approach the main console. This is the altar at which you serve. Your fingers, acting from muscle memory, begin the power-up sequence. There's a specific order, a ritual to be observed. First, a heavy, spring-loaded switch clicks upward, powering the primary systems. A small, green indicator light hums to life. Next, a series of smaller toggles. The tube amplifiers begin to glow with a faint, warm, orange light, like sleeping embers being coaxed awake. You can feel a gentle heat radiating from the ventilation grills on the console. High-frequency shortwave radio, the workhorse of global communication, relies on bouncing signals off the Earth's ionosphere. It's a technology that allows your voice, your numbers, to leapfrog over oceans and continents, slipping past borders as easily as a dream. For millions of people around the world, that same technology brings them the news from the BBC World Service or the music of Radio Free Europe. For a handful of listeners, it will bring them your voice. Now you turn to a small, unassuming brass nozzle on the wall, a pneumatic tube. With a gentle hiss of compressed air, a slim, gray canister arrives from the unseen heart of the facility. You twist it open. Inside is a single sheet of tightly rolled paper. It's not your script, not yet. This is your schedule. You unroll it on the desk. The page contains 3 lines of stark, typewritten text. A broadcast time, listed in coordinated universal time. A primary frequency and 2 alternates. And a call sign, a seemingly random combination of letters and numbers that will identify your transmission to its intended recipient. Tonight, it is Hotel 902. There is nothing else. No destination, no context, no clue as to the importance or utter lack thereof of the message you are about to send. Another hiss from the pneumatic tube delivers a second, heavier canister. This one is sealed with wax, bearing a stamp of the same triangle in a circle symbol you used to sign your life away a few minutes ago. You crack the seal. Inside is the one-time pad. It's a small, thin booklet of exceptionally fine, crisp paper, designed to burn quickly and leave little ash. Each page is filled with rows and columns of 5-digit number groups. This is the core of the whole operation, the one thing that ensures absolute secrecy. A code that is used only once and then destroyed can, in theory, never be broken. Historians and cryptanalysts still debate the exact statistical security of these systems, and whether enemy agencies ever came close to cracking them on a regular basis. You, however, place your faith not in the complex mathematics, but in the simple, brutal finality of the process. Read, then burn. You place the booklet on the stand next to the microphone. You take your seat, the chair's unforgiving ergonomics designed for posture, not comfort. You put on the heavy headset, the leatherette ear cups sealing you even further into your world of manufactured silence. You click a final switch on the console. The needle on the VU meter twitches, alive. You lean in towards the microphone, your lips the prescribed distance from the grill. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You whisper, your voice shockingly loud and intimate in your own ears. You're not testing for the listeners. You are testing for the engineer in some other room, the partial person behind the glass, the ghost in this machine who is monitoring your levels. A tiny red light next to the meter blinks twice. You are clear. Everything is ready. You look at the large, impossibly precise clock on the wall. Its smooth, silent sweep of a second hand is the only movement in the room. For minutes until broadcast. The waiting is the strangest part of the job. You have methodically stripped away your identity, traveled to a place that doesn't exist, and prepared a studio of absolute silence, all to perform a task that will last perhaps 15 minutes. In this silent countdown, the absurdity can sometimes bubble to the surface. You wonder about the listener. Are they huddled in a damp basement apartment in some gray Eastern Bloc capital? Or are they on a sun-drenched veranda somewhere, posing as a harmless expatriate? You wonder if they ever feel the strange, disembodied intimacy of this connection. Yours is perhaps the loneliest conversation in the world. A joke you once heard in training comes to mind. An agent supposedly asked his handler what to do if he messed up reading the numbers. The handler's reply was deadpan. Just hope it wasn't the launch codes. It wasn't a funny joke, but operatives told it anyway. It was a way of acknowledging the impossible weight of the work without ever speaking of it directly. You idly recall a report on the listening habits of amateur radio hobbyists, the devoted civilians who scan the shortwave bands for fun. They find broadcasts like yours endlessly fascinating. They give them folksy nicknames based on their introductory call signs or musical cues. There's one they call the Lincolnshire Poacher, which starts with a few bars of the English folk song. Another they dubbed the Swedish Rhapsody for its eerie, music box-like intro. It strikes you as beautifully, poignantly human that someone would try to impose a story, a personality, onto something so deliberately impersonal. They see mystery and romance in the monotone strings of numbers, while for you, it is simply a job, a series of tones to be rendered as accurately as a machine would. The clock continues its silent, relentless sweep. 1 minute to go. You take a final, calming breath. You place your finger on the first group of numbers in the booklet. Your job is not to understand. It is not to question. It is to be a clear channel, a voice in the void. You are a human cipher, the last fragile, biological link in a long chain of technological secrecy. You watch the second hand touch the 12. You press the button that opens the channel. And into the vast, crackling silence of the global airwaves, you begin to speak. The secrets witnessed by a gargoyle on Notre Dame Cathedral. You do not remember a beginning. There was no light to herald your arrival, no cry to mark your birth. There was only the long, patient silence of the earth. A deep, dreamless quiet, held within a great slab of limestone, a bone of the Paris Basin. You were nothing then. A possibility, a future shape dormant in the rock, alongside a billion fossilized seashells from an ancient, forgotten ocean. Your first sensation, your first inkling of self, is not a thought but a vibration. A sharp, insistent shock that travels through your being, followed by a high, singing ring. Ting, ting, thunk. It comes again, and again. This is the chisel. Your creator is a man whose name will never be recorded. He has rough, calloused hands and a concentration so profound it is a form of prayer. You feel him learning your texture, the grain of your stone soul. He is not in a hurry. Nobody is. This house for God, this cathedral, is a project for generations, an act of faith spelled out in decades. Weeks turn into months under his patient hands. He coaxes a form from the blankness. You feel a brow ridge emerge, heavy and furrowed. Eyes are hollowed out, but they are not for seeing in the way the man sees. They are voids, shadows that give the impression of a gaze. Your mouth is opened wide, a permanent, silent scream, but it is not for screaming. It is a channel, a throat, a gargoyle. That is the old word the workers use, a word that sounds like a liquid chuckle, like water being forced from a narrow space. The master mason told the apprentices the story one lunchtime, a tale of a dragon, La Gargoyle, who plagued the city of Rouen until a brave priest subdued it. They burned the beast's body, but its throat and head, tempered by the dragon's own fire, would not burn. So they mounted it on their church to ward off evil. Your function is far more practical, but you appreciate the flair. A good story makes for better work. You slowly become a creature of paradox, a winged beast who will never fly, a singer with a stone throat, destined to only perform in the rain. Your grimace is etched into permanence. Perhaps the mason is having a bad day, or perhaps you just think the whole idea of perching up here for eternity is faintly ridiculous. Either way, this is your face now. Try not to let it sour your mood for the next 800 years. The man chips away the last few flakes of stone from around your claws, which are gripping your plinth in a hold of grim determination. He wipes his dusty brow with the back of his arm, squints, and gives a small, satisfied nod. For him, a job well done. For you, existence. Then comes the journey upward. The world, which for months has been nothing but the mason's dusty workshop, erupts into a cacophony of sound and a terrifying sense of space. Ropes, thick and smelling of hemp and tar, are looped around you. Men with strong arms and stronger oaths begin to haul. You ascend, swaying gently, rising past the great, skeletal ribs of the flying buttresses. Below you, the construction site is a chaotic ballet of human endeavor. You see hundreds of men, ant-like from this height, shaping wood, mixing mortar, and laying the stones that are your kin. Their shouts are small, whipped away by the breeze. The vision for all this, you have heard them say, belongs to a man named Maurice de Sully the bishop. He dreamt of a cathedral that would pierce the Parisian sky, a testament to God and the glory of France, built in the new style they call Gothic. Looking down at the sprawling, muddy effort, you think it's a terribly ambitious dream. You are maneuvered into your final resting place, high on the gallery of the North Tower. Mortar, wet and cold, is slathered into the joint, securing you to the cathedral's body. It feels right, the way a key fits into a lock. The swaying stops. The ropes are removed. The men move on to the next task, and you are left alone, in the silence of the sky, to begin your long watch. Below you lies Paris. It is the 12th century. The city is a knot of wood and plaster, threaded through with muddy, unpaved lanes that churn to a thick slurry in the rain. The scent of wood smoke hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the smell of the river, of baking bread, and of humanity packed just a little too closely together. A pig, a common sight, snuffles its way across a narrow bridge spanning the Seine. You watch women lower buckets into the river for their water, gossiping as they work. You hear the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the rhythmic thud of a fuller beating cloth, and the ever-present chorus of church bells calling the faithful to prayer. Historians will still argue whether the varied and often grotesque forms of your stone brothers were a stonemason's cheeky act of creative rebellion or part of a divinely inspired, symbolic plan. Looking at the monkey pulling a face 2 spots down, you lean towards cheeky rebellion. Your existence settles into a slow, steady rhythm. The sun warms your back in the morning, casting your long, monstrous shadow over the roof tiles. Rain is a new sensation, a cold cascade that funnels into the collection basin on your back and then rushes through your open mouth. On stormy days, you are a roaring conduit, spitting a perfect arc of water far away from the cathedral's precious masonry walls. This is your great purpose, your reason for being. Honestly, it's a bit like getting to clear your throat after a century of silence. Profoundly satisfying, and a little dramatic for anyone standing below. The sun sets. The cool of the evening descends. The sounds of the city change. The shouts and hammering of the daytime work sites give way to the low murmur of voices from tavern doorways and the lonely notes of a flute played in an upper window. The moon, a perfect silver disk, traces its path across the sky. The stars, unobscured by the lights of a future world, are a brilliant, terrifying spray of diamonds. This is your world now. The stone, the sky, and the ceaseless, sprawling, beautiful, messy life of the city below. You are its silent, unblinking witness. And you have all the time in the world. The seasons turn. Not just 4, but hundreds of them, a slow, blurring carousel of color and light. Below you, Paris stretches and groans, shedding its skin time and time again. The small wooden hovels huddling near your walls are gradually replaced by taller, sturdier houses of plaster and timber. The lanes are slowly paved with rough, uneven stones, and the pigs you used to watch on your commute, remember them? Are now mostly banished outside the city walls. Progress, it seems, smells a little better. Centuries become your moments. Your stone face, weathered by 1,000 storms, stares down with the same unchanging grimace at the pageant of history. In the early 1400s, the endless, dreary war with the English reaches a strange new chapter. You watch one cold December day as a procession, glittering and bright, snakes its way towards your front doors. It's a coronation. Not for a French king, but for a pale, 10-year-old English boy, Henry VI, who is being crowned King of France right here, in this house. The sheer audacity of it. The square below is awash in the unfamiliar crimson and gold banners of England. The knights wear armor so polished it flashes like captured sunlight. The air, usually thick with the scent of coal smoke and river mud, is heavy with incense and the expensive perfumes of the nobility. From your perch, you wonder if this is the sort of thing your designers had in mind. It feels less like holy worship and more like an extremely tense, over-catered company party where 2 rival firms have been forced to merge. Life, for you, is a succession of such vignettes, witnessed in total silence. You see a young woman, a peasant girl from Lorraine who spoke of angels, brought into your home to give thanks after a great victory. They call her Joan. She looks small and unassuming from up here, dwarfed by the very history she is creating. Then just as quickly the tide turns. The English are gone, and French kings are back to being crowned in Reims. Thank you very much. Your life returns to the more familiar rhythm of feast days and funerals. The city's noise changes texture. The dull thud of a wooden cartwheel on cobblestone is joined by the higher-pitched rattle of ornate carriages. The clothes of the people below evolve, from the simple tunics of your creators to the elaborate ruffs and silks of the Renaissance. The world, it seems, is getting fancier. The late 18th century arrives not with a bang, but with a growing, anxious hum. The people below are restless. Their voices, carried up to you on the evening breeze, are different. The deferential murmurs are replaced by angry shouts. Words like liberty, fraternity, and equality echo in the square, ideas as solid and sharp as the stones of your own body. Then one summer, the soundscape changes forever. The joyful, chaotic ringing of the city's many church bells, a sound as constant as the river's flow, ceases. An eerie quiet descends, broken only by the murmur of angry crowds and the rhythmic tramp of marching feet. The revolution has come. From your vantage point, the chaos is almost theatrical. You see a crowd armed with pikes and hammers swarm your doors. They don't look up at you. Their quarrel is with what is inside and what your building represents, the old nexus of power of king and god. You hear the sickening crunch of statues being toppled, the smash of irreplaceable stained glass, the work of men who died centuries ago, undone in an afternoon. They drag the great statues of the biblical kings from your facade and, with performative fury, pull them down. Historians still argue whether this revolutionary fervor that swept through the cathedral was born of genuine atheistic belief, or if it was a more pragmatic, politically motivated performance designed to sever every possible tie to the old royal regime. Watching the grim satisfaction on the faces below, you suspect it was a messy, human mix of both. Your brothers in stone suffer. Many gargoyles and chimeras are chipped away, their monstrous faces deemed too gothic, too superstitious for this new age of reason. You are spared, perhaps through luck, perhaps through being just a little too high up to be worth the trouble. Remember that cheeky monkey Gargoyle? He loses a hand, but his expression of bewilderment somehow feels even more appropriate now. You watch as your home, this house of God, is rededicated. No longer Notre Dame de Paris, you are now the Temple of Reason. The name feels profoundly unreasonable. One afternoon, you witness one of the strangest processions in your long history. There's a parade, but it's not for a king or a bishop. It's for a new goddess. A local actress is draped in a white sheet, given a torch to hold, and placed upon a makeshift throne. She is paraded through your doors as the goddess of reason, looking cold, a little bored, and probably wondering if this is what she went into theater for. Strange, secular hymns are sung where soaring Gregorian chants once filled the vaults. The entire affair has the air of a poorly rehearsed school play, full of grand ideas but lacking a certain dignity. You wonder what the man who carved your face would make of it all. He spent years of his life crafting you to glorify God, only for you to end up as a silent audience member for this bizarre spectacle. It's so absurd, you might have laughed if your mouth wasn't already fixed in its wide, watery purpose. The storm of revolution eventually passes, as all storms do. The city is left battered, and so are you. Your home is a shell of its former self, looted, empty, and neglected. The grass of the parvis grows untrimmed. Birds nest in the broken windows. For decades, you serve a new purpose. No longer a channel for holy rainwater on a house of God. You are just a drain spout on a decaying, semi-abandoned public building. Rain still comes. It still fills your basin. It still pours from your stone throat. Your function remains, even when your meaning has been stripped away. You are still here, still watching, waiting for the next chapter. The slow bleed of neglect becomes your new normal. Decades pass where your primary companions are dust, spiders, and the creeping green fingers of moss. The grand temple of reason is a forgotten, failed experiment, and the building slumps back into being a church, but a weary, unloved one. The winds of the early 19th century feel different, fuller of coal smoke from new kinds of industry, carrying the faint, metallic scent of a world beginning to quicken its pace. Yet up here, on your perch, time is thick and slow. You watch the grass grow in the cracks of the gallery. You watch the slow decay of the wooden roof beams, their agony measured in years of quiet sagging. Sometimes you see officials from the city come by, men in fine coats who look up, shake their heads, jot down notes on clipboards, and talk about the cost of demolition. The idea is so monumentally sad, you feel your permanent stone grimace is, for the first time, an entirely accurate reflection of your mood. Then you begin to notice a man. He's not a priest or a politician. He's a walker, a thinker. He often stands in the parvis below, even in the rain, looking up. But he doesn't just look at the grand rose windows or the soaring height of the towers. He seems to look at the details. He looks at you. His eyes trace the lines of your wings, the hollows of your eyes. He sees the cracks, the stains, the quiet dignity of your survival. To him, you are not just a drain pipe. You are a character, a silent witness. This man, Victor Hugo, is a writer, and he is gathering stories from your stone skin. A book appears, a story of a hunchback bell ringer, a beautiful dancer, and a tormented archdeacon. And you, and all your stone brethren, are not just the setting. You are a central part of the tale. The book, a sensation, does something that no king, bishop, or revolutionary has ever managed. It makes the people of Paris fall in love with their broken cathedral. You witness a subtle shift in the crowds below. People start to stop and look up again, not with the fervor of religious pilgrims or the anger of a mob, but with a new kind of gaze, one filled with romantic imagination. They bring their children and point you out. They sketch you in charcoal on paper pads. After centuries of stoic service, you are suddenly a celebrity. It's a bit jarring. You almost expect someone to ask for your autograph. This wave of popular affection, this story breathed back into the stones, does its work. The talk of demolition ceases. Instead, there is talk of restoration. A grand national project. Soon, the scaffolding returns. It is different from the rough-hewn timber of your creation. This is a more engineered, precise web of metal and wood. And with it comes a new master, a man whose name, like Hugo's, will become permanently welded to yours, Eugene Violet Leduc. He is an architect, but more than that, he is a medievalist, an idealist, a man who believes he can not only heal your wounds, but make you more perfectly yourself than you ever were. Architectural purists and romantic revivalists still debate whether Viollet-le-Duc's 25-year-long restoration saved Notre Dame or created a magnificent 19th century fantasy of a medieval cathedral. From your perspective, it's simply loud. The familiar quiet is replaced by the clanging of hammers, the scrape of trowels, the shouts of foremen, and the creak of hoists lifting new, clean-cut blocks of limestone. These new stones are pale against your own gray, weather-beaten hide. They are the new skin, grafted onto the old bones. And you get new brothers. Many of them. Viollet-le-Duc, it turns out, is a great admirer of your kind. But his creations are different. They are not gargoyles. They do not have your function, your solemn duty to spit water. They are chimeres, purely decorative monsters, born from his romantic imagination. On the new gallery of chimeras, a menagerie of grotesques begins to sprout. There is the famous Strige, the winged beast with its head in its hands and its tongue lolling out, the very image of mournful boredom. You look at him and feel a certain kinship. There are long-necked birds, quizzical demons, and hybrid beasts that defy biological categorization. They don't have your work ethic, of course, no messy plumbing for them, just the leisurely job of sitting and looking menacingly artistic. You are old industry, they are the flashy new media department. Still, it's nice to have the company. The gallery, once a lonely, crumbling ledge, is now a crowded party of stone freaks. You watch them being carved and hoisted into place. You see the pride in the eyes of the sculptors who shaped them, and you witness a particularly quirky act of artistic ego. Viollet-le-Duc designs a magnificent new spire, a lead-encased timber arrow to replace the one lost centuries ago. Around its base, he places statues of the 12 apostles. And for one of them, St. Thomas, the patron saint of architects, he uses his own face. You watch them haul the bronze statue into place. And there he is, your restorer, forever captured in metal, holding a builder's square and gazing up in permanent admiration at his own masterpiece. As far as self-portraits go, it's certainly more ambitious than a painting. The work is finally done. The scaffolding comes down, piece by piece, revealing a cathedral reborn. She looks cleaner, sharper, perhaps a little too perfect, like an old woman who has had a startlingly effective facelift. The broken saints have been replaced. The smashed glass has been reblown. And at the very peak, the new spire, with the architect's face at its foot, points a triumphant finger at the heavens. The world you look down upon has changed, too. The age of gaslight has arrived. In the evenings, a soft, yellow glow illuminates the grand new boulevards that Baron Haussmann has plowed through the heart of medieval Paris. The familiar maze of narrow, winding streets you knew for so long is gone, replaced by broad, straight avenues. The air is now filled with the rumble of omnibuses and the clatter of a million more people, a city buzzing with imperial confidence under a new Napoleon. Your second life has begun. You are no longer just a gargoyle. You are a work of art, a symbol, a famous face looking out from a famous home, witnessing the birth of the modern age. The world glitters now. The soft, buttery glow of gaslight gives way to the sharper, brighter glint of electricity. A great, lacy tower of iron, meant to be temporary, has decided to stay, becoming a new rival on the city's skyline. From your perch, Paris at night is no longer a collection of cozy, isolated lanterns, but a sprawling carpet of brilliant lights. You watch the first automobiles make their sputtering way across the square, huffing, popping contraptions that frighten the horses and seemed only slightly more reliable. The 19th century melts into the 20th. The pace of life below quickens with every passing year, but up here nothing changes. The wind, the rain, the patient waiting. You are a silent witness to the city's deep breaths of joy and its gut-wrenching sobs. Twice in the new century, you taste the bitter air of a world at war. During the Great War, you watch young men in blue coats march away, their faces a mixture of fear and bravado. You feel the distant, ground-shaking tremor of the great guns on the Marne. The city holds its breath for 4 long years. Then comes the second, even darker storm. You watch as banners bearing a twisted black cross are draped from buildings. A curfew empties the streets, leaving a silence that is heavier and more menacing than any you have ever known. But then comes liberation. One August morning, the familiar sound of bells explodes across the city. Not just your own great bells in the South Tower, silent for so long, but a joyful, defiant chorus from every church steeple. The sound washes over Paris in a wave of pure, unadulterated relief. Below, the square erupts. People flood out of their homes, weeping and cheering as the tanks of the Free French forces roll past your doors. You see a man climb a lamppost to hang the tricolor, its colors shockingly vibrant against the gray stone. From your stoic vantage point, you have seen a king crowned and a goddess of reason enthroned, but this raw, unscripted explosion of human joy feels more profound than any choreographed ceremony. The years that follow are a blur of peace and reconstruction. And with peace comes a new kind of army, the tourists. They arrive in ever-increasing numbers, a river of humanity flowing through your doors day after day. They speak 100 different languages, their voices a soft, rising babble that never quite ceases. They aim strange, clicking boxes at you, capturing your best side, which, after centuries of rain and wind, is all of them. Their faces are a study in contrasts. Awe, exhaustion, delight, and sometimes a particular kind of bewilderment. You've noticed it mostly among visitors from Japan, a look of profound dislocation, as if the reality of Paris, the grit, the noise, the sheer overwhelming Frenchness of it all, cannot be reconciled with the pristine, romantic city of their imagination. It's a gentle kind of heartbreak, a documented phenomenon the experts now call Paris syndrome. The sheer scale of it all becomes the new backdrop to your life. The quiet contemplation of Victor Hugo is replaced by the amplified narration of tour guides. Sociologists and urban planners still debate whether mass tourism enriches a city's cultural fabric or inevitably transforms it into a hollow-themed park version of itself. You don't have an opinion. You simply watch. They are a part of the city's life, just as the medieval pilgrims and the revolutionaries were before them. And then comes an evening in April, a Monday. The air is mild, carrying the sweet scent of cherry blossoms from the gardens below. The last of the day's tourists have trickled out, their departing chatter fading into the twilight. A familiar quiet settles over your home. The sun sets, painting the clouds in shades of rose and violet. You settle in for the night, just as you have for nearly 300,000 nights before. But something is different. A new smell reaches you. It is not the familiar incense, not candle wax, not coal smoke. It is sharp, acrid chemical. Then comes a flicker of light, not from a caretaker's lantern, but from high up, inside, near the roof. An orange, dancing light, unnatural and greedy. An alarm begins to sound. Not a bell, but a piercing modern shriek. It is the ugliest sound you have ever heard. The light grows. It pushes against the stained glass from within, turning the windows into monstrous, glowing panels of hellfire. The quiet murmur of the city below is replaced by a new sound, a rising chorus of sirens, converging on your island from all directions. And then a low, deep, terrifying roar begins. It's the sound of ancient, dry timber, the vast, intricate forest of beams that has held up your roof since the days of your creation, being consumed. Heat begins to soak into your very being. For centuries, your stone body has only known the cool of the rain and the gentle warmth of the sun. This is a new sensation, an invasive, searing heat that makes you feel as though the stone itself is sweating. Below you, a crowd gathers. They are not joyful, not angry. They are a silent, stunned mass, their faces illuminated by the inferno above them. They hold up their little glowing rectangles, capturing your agony, but many are simply watching, tears streaming down their faces. A soft sound rises from them, a gentle, communal prayer. Ave Maria. You watch as the fire, a furious beast, bursts through the roof, spitting sparks and embers into the night sky. And then comes the moment that breaks the heart of the city. The spire, Violet Leduc's great needle, your architect's proudest achievement, hesitates for a moment, glowing like a brand. It lists, it groans, and then it surrenders, plunging down into the heart of the blaze, taking the architect's statue and the apostles with it. A collective gasp, a unified sound of grief, rises from the thousands watching below. It's the first time in 800 years you've genuinely feared for your job security. Water rains down on you now. Not from the clouds, but from powerful jets fired by the firefighters, the pompiers, working desperately below. It feels strange, this man-made storm, as it washes over your soot-stained face, mixing with the falling ash. The fight lasts all night. You sit, unmoving, through the terrifying roar, the heat, the strange red and blue lights that flash across your features, giving your grimace a macabre, strobe-lit life. Then slowly, as dawn approaches, the fire dies. The roaring recedes to a hiss, and then, finally, to a smoking, steaming silence. The sun rises on a scene of devastation. Your home has a great, gaping wound in its back. The sky is visible where a vaulted ceiling once stood. You are covered in filth, stained black with smoke and ash, but you are still here. The fire came, but it did not claim you. Your brothers, the famous chimeras like the Strige, have also survived, their stone faces now looking out over a scene of quiet, gray ruin. The long night is over. You watch the first rays of morning light illuminate the dust motes dancing over the wreckage. You are scarred. Your house is wounded. But your watch has not ended. It continues. The final voyage of a galleon captain in a world filling with steamships. The morning light, thin and filtered through a persistent shroud of gray, finds you standing at the stern of the Estrella Antigua. The name, meaning Old Star, feels a little on the nose this morning. Below you, the harbor is a place you no longer fully recognize. It has the same bones, the same granite keys your keel has scraped against for 30 years, the same familiar curve of the bay opening out to the slate-gray sea. But the lifeblood that flows through it is new. It smells different. Instead of the clean, sharp sense of tar, salt, and seasoned oak that once defined this space, the air is thick with the metallic tang of coal smoke, a gritty, sulfurous blanket that coats the back of your throat. The sounds are all wrong, too. The port used to sing a song you understood. The cheerful cacophony of sailors shouting in a dozen languages, the rhythmic thud of barrels being rolled up a gangplank, the high, lonely cry of gulls circling for a discarded piece of hardtack. That symphony is still there, but it's been drowned out by a new, relentless percussion. The percussive clang of iron on iron, the hiss of pressurized steam escaping from valves, and the deep, chugging, mechanical heartbeat of the engines. These new ships don't sing. They groan and bellow like beasts of metal. You run a hand over the polished oak of your ship's railing, its surface worn smooth and dark by countless years and countless hands. The wood is warm from the weak morning sun, alive beneath your palm. The Estrella is a galleon, a ghost from another time. Not one of the grand, high-castled treasure ships of the Spanish Main. She is a more modest merchantman, stout and broad-beamed, built for cargo, not for battle. But her bones are of the old world. Her ribs are hand-hewn oak, her skin is thick pine planking, her sinews are ropes of natural fiber, acres of them, all neatly coiled and ready. She is a magnificent living thing, born from a forest and brought to life by human hands. And she is a relic. Moored just across the way is the reason why. The RMS Prometheus. She is not beautiful. She is brutal. Her hull is a sheer cliff of black iron plates, riveted together in stark, unlovely lines. She has no elegant curve of a bowsprit, no proud beakhead carved in the shape of a soaring eagle. Her front end is blunt, designed to punch through waves, not to dance with them. And where your Estrella sprouts 3 mighty masts, ready to blossom with canvas, the Prometheus has only one, a short, utilitarian thing used for steadying sails and little else. Her true power lies in the great, sooty funnel that stands amidships, belching a thick column of greasy black smoke into the sky, a constant, arrogant declaration of her independence from the wind. The men who work this new ship are a different breed. You watch them moving about her decks. They walk with a different kind of purpose, the sure-footed stride of mechanics and engineers, not sailors. They carry oily rags and heavy wrenches. You doubt many of them know how to tie a proper bowline or read the subtle shifts in the clouds that foretell a squall. They don't need to. Their master is not the capricious, invisible god of the wind. Their master is a furnace, a ravenous, caged fire that must be fed. You've heard the stories from your own crew. Men who took a short berth on a steamer for the high wages of the Black Gang. The stokers who live in a Dantean inferno below the waterline, their skin permanently stained with coal dust, their lungs filled with the same. They work 4-hour shifts in blistering heat, shoveling coal, their whole world reduced to the maw of the fire and the insistent clang of the engineer's bell. It seems a terrible price to pay for predictability. Historians still argue whether the transition from sail to steam was a triumphant march of progress or a more tragic tale of lost craftsmanship, and a severed connection to the natural world. Looking at the Prometheus staining the sky with its filth, you have your own opinion on the matter. This journey you are about to embark upon is your last. The company has made it clear. The Estrella is being retired, sold for scrap. The cargo of fine wines and artisanal textiles you are carrying to the Americas is one final, almost sentimental gesture. Her holds are only half full. It's no longer economical, they say. The Prometheus can make the crossing in a third of the time, regardless of the weather, and her vast iron belly can carry 10 times the cargo. Economics, you've learned, is a tide more relentless than any you've faced at sea. You pull your greatcoat tighter around your shoulders. Your first mate, a man nearly as old as the ship, approaches and stands beside you at the rail. He doesn't speak for a long moment. He just looks at the steamer, a grimace on his weathered face. "Ugly as a bucket of rust, Captain," he finally says, his voice a low rumble. "She gets there on time, Mr. Hayes," you reply, the words feeling like a betrayal on your tongue. "Aye," he spits, not with malice, but with a deep, weary resignation. "So does a hearse." A quirky story comes to mind, one you read in the paper last week. An inventor in London has patented a pneumatic railway, a system that proposes to shoot passenger carriages through underground tubes on a cushion of air, like a message in a bank canister. Remember those from the story of the Numbers station? Apparently, a trial run was a grand success, at least until the carriage overshot the platform and demolished the stationmaster's office. You chuckle to yourself. Progress, it seems, has a tendency to make a mess. Maybe there's still room in the world for something slow, something deliberate, something that knows how to stop. You leave the rail and begin your final inspection. You move through your ship with the ease of a man walking through his own home. The familiar scent of bilge water, rope, and slow-brewing coffee from the galley comforts you. The gentle creak of the hull as she strains against her moorings is a sound you know better than your own heartbeat. This is the part of the process you love, the quiet litany of preparation. You run a hand along the mainmast, its surface scarred with the memory of a lightning strike off the Azores 10 years ago. You check the lashings on the longboats, the neatly arranged halyards at the pin rail, the compass in its binnacle, its needle quivering with a gentle, magnetic eagerness. Everything is as it should be, a small pocket of order in a world gone mad with speed and smoke. The dawn of the Industrial Revolution has fundamentally changed the relationship between humanity and the planet. But here on your decks, the old ways still hold. For a little while longer. The time for quiet reflection is over. The tide is turned, a subtle but insistent pull from the open sea, and a favorable offshore breeze has begun to clear a path through the smoke of the harbor. It's time. You give the nod to Mr. Hayes. No grand pronouncement is necessary. He understands. A calloused hand cups his mouth, and he bellows an order that is not a shriek but a deep, resonant command, a sound designed to carry over the wind without startling it. All hands, prepare to weigh anchor. Instantly, the deck comes alive, but it is an ordered life, a choreography rehearsed 1,000 times. Men move to their stations with a swift, rope-soled silence. There is no confusion, no wasted motion. This is a dance, and every man knows his steps. You watch them, a surge of quiet pride warming you against the morning chill. They are your men, yes, but more than that, they are the ship's men. They belong to the Estrella as much as she belongs to them. Your gaze drifts back for a moment to the RMS Prometheus. It still sits there, a black iron lump, a steady stream of soot rising from its funnel. It will not move until the pressure in its boilers is optimal, until its machinery is ready. It will leave according to a schedule set by a clock, a timetable printed in an office. You, however, are leaving because the sea has invited you to. It feels like a far more dignified arrangement. The focus of the activity is forward at the bow. Men gather around the capstan, a great, drum-like winch of polished wood and gleaming brass. They slot the long capstan bars into the sockets, turning the squat machine into a kind of horizontal windmill of human power. Mr. Hayes takes his place, not with the men pushing, but standing nearby, ready to watch the anchor chain as it comes in, link by weary link. A young man, little more than a boy, with a chest broader than men twice his age, steps into the center of the gathering. This is the shantyman. His role is as vital as the helmsman's. He begins to sing, his voice raw and powerful, a tale of a sailor's love for a girl he left behind. The song is not for entertainment. It is a tool. Its rhythm sets the pace of the work, turning a grueling task into a steady, communal effort. The men lean into the bars, their muscles straining, their boots scuffing a circle into the clean-scrubbed deck, and they roar back the chorus in unison. The sound, raw and human, cuts through the harbor's mechanical din. It is the sound of pure, collaborative work. Maybe the shantyman's voice isn't good enough for an opera house, but right now, it's the most beautiful music in the world. Slowly, reluctantly, the anchor chain begins to emerge from the water, dripping with harbor mud and garlanded with green seaweed. The capstan groans in time with the song, a deep, woody complaint against the strain. You hear the final clicks as the great iron anchor breaks the surface and is hauled dripping into its housing at the cathead. The song dies away, and a new order is sung out. Loose the topsails. Now the dance moves upward. Sailors, as agile as monkeys, scramble into the rigging, their bodies dark shapes against the pale gray sky. They move with a fluid, terrifying grace, along the foot ropes strung beneath the great yards. One slip is a fall of 50, 60 feet to the hard deck or the cold water below. They don't seem to notice. Their hands, tough as old leather, move with blurring speed, untying the gaskets that keep the sails furled. You see the flash of a tattoo on one man's ankle, the rooster that sailors believe protects them from drowning. A peculiar bit of faith in a world increasingly devoted to iron and steam. Remember the crocodile dung sunscreen of the Egyptians? Humanity's belief in strange protections is a stubborn old weed. The sails are not simply opened, they are coaxed. On the deck below, teams of men stand ready at the halyards. With a series of coordinated, powerful heaves, they raise the heavy yards and the canvas unfurls. Not in a single, sudden sheet, but in stages. First the main topsail, a great square of cream-colored canvas that falls open with a soft, whooshing sigh. It hangs limp for a moment, and then the breeze finds it. It ripples, it snaps, and then it fills, swelling into a gentle, perfect curve, a great white lung inhaling the morning air. You feel it the moment the sail bites. A subtle shift under your feet. The ship awakens. She is no longer a tethered piece of property, a static object bobbing at a quay. She is alive, a vessel of purpose, her head turning slowly, gracefully, towards the sea lane. The rudder answers your helmsman's touch. One by one, the other sails are unfurled, the foretopsail, the jibs, the staysails, each one adding its own measure of power, its own voice to the choir. Maritime historians debate whether the complex grammar of a fully rigged ship, with its hundreds of distinct lines and knots, constituted a single, universal language of the sea, or if each vessel was its own distinct dialect. On the Estrella, it is a language you speak as fluently as your own mother tongue. The harbor pilot, a local man brought on to navigate the treacherous shallow channels near the port, stands beside you, offering quiet course corrections. As you glide silently past the Prometheus, you allow yourself a small, final glance. Her decks are still. The roar of her engines is a contained, impatient rumble. She is a powerhouse, yes, but a tethered one. The Estrella is moving on the gentlest of breezes, propelled by a technology that is as old as civilization itself, mastered and refined into a high art form during the long peace of the Pax Britannica. As you clear the final harbor buoy, the water around you deepens to a rich, dark blue. The air loses its smoky, industrial taste, replaced by the clean, damp, briny perfume of the open ocean. The last traces of the land are fading. The pilot boat, a small cutter, pulls alongside. The pilot, his job done, gives you a final nod, scrambles down a rope ladder with practiced ease, and is gone. The slap of the waves against the hull is louder now. The creak of the timbers is more pronounced. The wind sings a high, clear note in the rigging. You are alone now. Just you, your ship, your crew, and the vast, empty horizon ahead. The journey, your last great conversation with the wind, has truly begun. The land is a ghost, a smudge on the western horizon that quickly dissolves into the haze. The city, with its noise and its smoke and its restless, relentless sense of tomorrow, is gone. The world shrinks and at the same time expands into an immense, unbroken circle of water and sky. The sea is a deep, rhythmic breath. The sky is a vast, shifting canvas. This is the part of the voyage that feels like a homecoming. Out here, time itself behaves differently. It ceases to be a series of frantic, ticking seconds measured by a pocket watch, and returns to its natural state. A slow, grand progression from one dawn to the next. Your days fall into a rhythm as old as the sea itself. It is a life measured not by the clock, but by the ship's bells, which chime every half hour, dividing the day and night into a series of 4-hour watches. At the change of the watch, there is a quiet, shuffling ceremony. The men coming on duty arrive on deck, their eyes blinking in the bright sunlight or slowly adjusting to the starlight. The helmsman whispers the current course to his replacement. The lookout up in the crow's nest calls down a report. All's well. This peaceful transfer of responsibility, this continuity of vigilance, is the anchor of your small, floating society. You walk the decks of your ship. It is not an idle stroll. It is a constant, quiet dialogue. Your boots know the subtle slopes of the planks, the places where the deck is worn smoothest by the passage of feet. You run a hand along a shroud, feeling the tension in the heavy, tarred rope. You listen. You listen to the voice of the ship. The low creak of the mainmast is a different sound in a following sea than it is in a beam sea. The high-pitched hum of the rigging changes with the strength of the wind. The gurgle of water, moving along the rudder, has its own vocabulary. These are the sounds of a healthy ship, the sounds of a vessel in harmony with the forces acting upon it. The engineers on the Prometheus listen for the clang of a broken valve or the grind of an unlubricated piston. You listen for the music. Days are spent trimming the sails, an endless, subtle art of adjustment. The wind is not a constant force. It is a fickle, living thing. It ebbs and flows, shifts a few degrees north or south, puffs and dies away. Your crew, directed by the clipped, precise orders of Mr. Hayes, are constantly at work on the braces and sheets, the lines that control the angle of the yards and the shape of the sails. A pull here, a slackening there, all to capture every last ounce of power from the air. You watch a young sailor, his face a mask of concentration, tying a reef knot, his fingers moving with an ingrained intelligence, a muscle memory passed down through generations. He is not just securing a sail, he is practicing an ancient craft. When the wind is steady, there is time. Time for the shipboard routines that hold a crew together. The ship's carpenter sits in a patch of sun, methodically sharpening his tools, the rasp of his file a slow, meditative sound. In the galley, the cook, a man of surprising creativity with salted beef and dried beans, whistles a tune as he kneads dough for the day's bread. Some of the men bring out small squares of wood and begin to carve, creating intricate little sculptures of ships or seabirds. Others mend their clothes, their needles flashing in the sunlight. You see two older sailors sitting on a coil of rope, engaged in a game of checkers on a board they scratched into the deck years ago, using seashells and pebbles as their pieces. It is a scene of profound, quiet industry. This is what the men with their spreadsheets and timetables don't understand. A ship at sea is not just a vehicle. It is a community, a self-contained world with its own culture, its own rhythms, and its own simple, hard-won pleasures. At night, the world is transformed. The sea turns to black ink, the sky to velvet. With no city lights to pollute the view, the stars are almost frighteningly bright. They are not just twinkling decorations, they are your tools. You stand on the quarterdeck with your sextant, a beautiful instrument of brass and silvered mirrors. Holding it to your eye, you capture a star, bringing its brilliant point of light down to meet the dark, sharp line of the horizon. It is a delicate, practiced art, a kind of dance between you, the ship's gentle rolling, the star, and the horizon. A few measurements, a quick consultation of your almanac and chronometer, and a few minutes of calculation on a slate, and you know where you are. In the middle of a vast, empty ocean, you can find your precise place in the world with a splinter of captured starlight. There is a magic in that which no telegraph or steam-powered engine can ever match. One calm afternoon, as you are making your noon observation, you think of a particularly odd story from a naturalist's journal you once read. It described the practice of sailing stones in a desert valley in a far-off part of America. Rocks, some weighing hundreds of pounds, that mysteriously slide across the flat, dry lake bed, leaving long tracks behind them, moved by a rare combination of ice and wind. A process so slow, so subtle, that no one has ever actually seen it happen. You feel a kinship with those stones. You, too, are being pushed by an invisible, elemental force, following a track that only you can see, on a journey that the modern world has already deemed too slow to be worth watching. You spend a great deal of time in your cabin, which is a cozy, womb-like space, its windows looking out over the ship's creamy wake. Here, your charts are spread out on a great oak table. You trace your intended course with a brass divider, your finger lingering over the names of ocean currents and submerged mountain ranges. The Azores High, the Sargasso Sea, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. They are not just lines on a map to you. They are personalities, old friends, and familiar adversaries in this great, watery landscape. The great age of sail, which truly flowered in the 19th century, produced some of the most beautiful and accurate charts the world had ever seen, masterpieces of the engraver's art. You are probably one of the last men who will ever use them to make a living. As you lean over the chart, you are a master of a dying science. The captains of the new steamships will still consult charts, of course, but their approach will be different. They will draw a straight line from one port to another, a conqueror's line, defying wind and current. Your path is a gentle curve, a conversation, a negotiation with the elements. You are not conquering the ocean. You are asking for its polite cooperation. And as you sail eastward, farther and farther away from the dirty, noisy world of steam and iron, you find a deep, quiet peace in that distinction. The silence is broken only by the gentle creak of the hull and the whisper of the waves, the last, sweet notes of a fading song. The sweet, earthy smell of land finds you long before you can see it. It is a scent carried on a gentle westerly breeze, a subtle perfume of damp earth, flowering plants, and wood smoke that cuts through the clean, sterile saltiness of the open ocean. After weeks at sea, it is an aroma as intoxicating as any wine. Your journey across the great, empty plain of the Atlantic is ending. The final act of your final voyage has begun. The first sign of your approach is not land, but life. A pod of dolphins appears one morning, sleek, gray torpedoes of muscle and joy that race alongside your bow, leaping from the water in arcs of sheer exuberance. Your men, who have seen this sight 100 times, still line the rails to watch, their faces breaking into quiet smiles. The dolphins are an unofficial welcoming committee, a sign that the featureless wilderness of the deep sea is giving way to the richer coastal world. Soon after, the gulls arrive, their cries a raucous, familiar sound, a stark contrast to the ethereal silence of the petrels you left behind in the mid-ocean. Then at dawn one day, the lookout's call comes ringing down from the crow's nest. Land ho! It is a smudge on the horizon, no bigger than your thumbnail, but it is solid. It is real. A collective sigh of relief seems to pass through the ship. You have done it. You have guided the Estrella Antigua across the sea one last time, using nothing but ancient knowledge, human muscle, and the invisible breath of the sky. As you draw closer, the featureless smudge resolves into hills, forests, and the distant shapes of buildings. The water beneath you changes color, from the deep, sapphire blue of the abyss to the softer aquamarine and jade green of the coastal shelf. The pace aboard the ship quickens. The mood shifts from the languid routine of the crossing to the more focused, energetic work of making landfall. Sails are shortened. The decks are scrubbed one last time. Ropes are coiled with presentation-level neatness. There is pride in this work, the desire to bring your ship into port looking her absolute best, a grand old lady arriving for her final ball. And then you see it. Your heart, which you thought had become immune to such things, sinks just a little. A plume of ugly black smoke, just like the ones you left behind weeks ago, rises from behind a headland. A steamship. It emerges a few miles ahead, heading in the opposite direction, moving with a chugging, relentless certainty. It is a stark reminder that the world you have so peacefully inhabited for the past month does not exist ashore. The new age is here, too. It has beaten you to it. It has already made itself at home. As you navigate the final approach to the harbor, you must now share the sea lane with these new, graceless vessels. A small, noisy steam tug, its engine making a sound like a coffee grinder full of gravel, chuffs past you, its wake rocking the Estrella with an impudent slap. Its captain, a man with a soot-stained face, gives you a cursory glance, his expression a mixture of pity and mild curiosity, the way one might look at a quaint, horse-drawn carriage holding up traffic in a city of roaring automobiles. It doesn't feel malicious, which somehow makes it worse. It is the simple, unthinking arrogance of the future, a future in which you are an irrelevance. Entering the port is like sailing into a different world from the one you left. The buildings are taller, the docks are longer, and the air is just as thick with the smoke and clang of industry. But here, there is a strange hybridity. The port is still home to a forest of masts. Dozens of sailing ships, schooners, barks, brigs, are still at work, plying the coastal routes, a testament to the fact that sail power hasn't vanished overnight. Historians often point out that the age of sail and the age of steam had a much longer and more complex period of overlap than popular memory suggests, coexisting in a kind of awkward, transitional truce for much of the late 19th century. You see that truce firsthand. For every chuffing steamship, there are still 5 silent sisters of the wind, loading lumber or cotton or molasses. Your kind is not yet extinct. You are merely endangered. The harbor pilot who comes aboard is younger than you expect, a man with sharp eyes and a nervous energy. He handles the ship well, but he speaks a new language. He talks of steam ferries, of shipping channel regulations that have changed since your last visit, of new docks built to accommodate the deeper drafts of the iron hulls. You nod along, feeling like a visitor from another country, a stranger in a land you once knew as your own. You recall a peculiar bit of naval lore you heard once, that in the old days, some sailors would get a tattoo of a pig and a rooster on their feet. Remember the rooster? The pig was also meant to prevent drowning, because pigs, unable to swim, supposedly hate the water so much they'll try to find land as fast as possible. You look at the maze of new docks and wonder if that pig would know which way to run. Your final destination is not the main commercial quay, bustling with cranes and railway lines. The pilot guides you to a quieter, older part of the harbor, a placid backwater where other ships of your vintage are moored. This is to be the Estrella's final resting place before the shipbreakers are called in. As you glide towards your designated berth, the wind, as if paying its final respects, dies down completely. The last few sails are furled, and the ship ghosts the final 100 yards on her own momentum, silent and dignified. The lines are thrown. The thick, heavy ropes are looped over the weathered pilings on the dock. The gangplank is lowered, connecting you one last time to the solid world. You stand on your quarterdeck and watch the crew perform their final tasks. They work in a strangely subdued quiet. There is no triumphant chanty. Only the soft thud of rope, the creak of the plank, and the sad, final sigh of a ship settling against the dock. The orders are given. The anchor light is lit, even though you are safely moored. It is tradition. It is a sign that the ship, though dormant, is still alive, still home. You walk down the gangplank, your sea legs feeling clumsy and strange on the unmoving ground. You turn back and look at the Estrella Antigua. She looks tired but proud. She has done her duty. Your hand rests on the manifest in your coat pocket, the cargo of wine and textiles safely delivered. Your own duty is done. As twilight settles, painting the sky in soft shades of gray and lavender, you watch as the lamps are lit on your ship, their warm, yellow glow a beacon of a dying age against the encroaching dark. You will be ashore now, a man of the sea with no ship, a captain with no command. A relic, just like your Estrella. And as you turn to walk away into the smoky, unfamiliar streets of this new world, you feel a profound and quiet sense of completion. You did not race the future. You did not fight it. You simply sailed your own course at your own pace and delivered your charge safely to the last harbor. And in a world obsessed with beginnings, there is a strange and gentle grace in knowing how to navigate a good, clean end.